The Egyptian president arrives in Moscow's Red Square for Victory Day celebrations. President Sisi reaffirms support for the Palestinian cause during a meeting with Abbas. And Egypt joins the Moscow parade for the 80th Victory Day anniversary. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has arrived in Moscow's Red Square to celebrate the 80th anniversary of Victory Day. Numerous leaders, including El-Sisi, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, are attending the event. El-Sisi arrived in Moscow yesterday at the invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin and participated in a dinner honoring foreign delegation leaders. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has met with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Moscow during the Victory Day celebrations. President el-Sisi reaffirmed Egypt's full support for the Palestinian cause, advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza, the release of detainees, and sufficient humanitarian aid. Abbas expressed gratitude for Egypt's efforts and highlighted the urgency of international recognition for the Palestinian state, emphasizing the importance of upcoming meetings to support a two-state solution. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has engaged in friendly discussions with several leaders attending the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow, including Chinese President Xi Jinping. That came on the sidelines of Moscow's Victory Day celebrations, where the two leaders warmly welcomed each other during the meeting. Egypt has participated in the Grand Military Parade in Moscow's Red Square, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Units from 13 countries, including Azerbaijan and Vietnam, participated in the event. Victory Day, celebrated annually on May 9th, honors the surrender of Nazi's regime in Germany and symbolizes national pride in the sacrifices made by the Soviet people during the war. Well, for further analysis on Egypt's participation in Russia's Victory Day celebrations, we're joined from Cairo by the international relations specialist, Dr. Mohammed Osman. Good afternoon to you. And let me start by asking you, what does President Sisi's presence at Russia's Victory Day celebrations signal about Egypt's evolving ties with Moscow amid shifting global alliances?
Thank you for having me, Mona. Of course, President El-Sisi's participation today in the military parade in Moscow in the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II, or in what is called in Russia the Great Patriotic War, does signify Egypt's steadfast and deep and very strong ties with the Russian Federation, a relationship that dates back to the 18th century and that was extremely deepened in the second half of the 20th century and was even reinvigorated when President El-Sisi was elected in 2014. This is not the first time President El-Sisi participated in the victory parade of Russia. However, the time President El-Sisi accepted President Putin's invitation in a time where the world is witnessing rather unprecedented challenges and turbulence that has never been seen since the end of the Second World War. And of course, this is the irony of it all, that 8 years after the Second World War, and still we are still in the same predicament of not being able to resolve long-standing conflicts without resorting to violence. So I think that the visit of President El-Sisi signifies that. Later today, President El-Sisi and President Putin are reportedly will be holding bilateral talks. There is a variety of subjects for them to discuss, whether bilateral or pertaining to regional and global affairs. So, and of course, we've also seen the participation of the Egyptian military in the parade today, which
Exactly.
also demonstrates the
Yes.
deepness of the comprehensive tie relationship between Egypt and Russia.
Right. You
Yes, go ahead,
respectively
please.
spoke here about the participation of Egypt in the military parade, reflecting the current defense and foreign policy. How does this position Egypt on the international stage and definitely in the Russian particular attention here?
Yeah, Egypt is a regional middle power. And since President El-Sisi was elected in 2014, he took a strategic decision to diversify Egypt's foreign relations and to have an open foreign policy solely built on common interests and mutual respect. And in this regard, President El-Sisi pursued a foreign policy along, of course, with Egypt's national institutions that sought to build sound relationships based on the principles I just mentioned with all of the acting key powers in the world, whether the United States, with which Egypt has a very long-standing strategic partnership, or the European Union, which Egypt also has a very strong strategic relationship with, or the Russian Federation, which Egypt has strong historical ties to and a reinvigorated strategic relationship with. The same goes, of course, for the People's Republic of China, India, Brazil. So this is how Egypt is acting right now. And this comes within Egypt's foreign policy, balanced foreign policy that supports, that moves within the boundaries of international law and international principles, and at the same time, strictly not engaging in any polarization or aligning ourselves with any camp. And this is also reflected even in Egypt's defense policies. Egypt has a strong defense relationship with the United States and also a strong defense relationship with Russia and with France and with China and Germany, for example. So
Yes.
this is the philosophy of the Egyptian decision makers, and I think very sound policy in this regard.
Now, on the sidelines of this celebration, you spoke previously about an anticipated talks between President Sisi and the Russian president, but on the sidelines already there was a meeting between the leader of or President Sisi and the Palestinian leader. Now, from your point of view, what role can Moscow play to further the Gaza ceasefire or calling for more talks on a ceasefire?
Well, Russia has always been one of the main global powers supporting Palestinian rights historically. Russia was one of the first permanent member of the Security Council to recognize the state of Palestine back in 1988, and has always been a staunch supporter of the Palestinian cause politically and diplomatically. And Russia is resuming its role as such. With regards to Gaza, they have rejected Israel's aggression. They have rejected the plans or the schemes of the forced displacement of Palestinians. They have completely supported Egypt's position. They have supported Egypt's aid efforts, humanitarian efforts as well, through sending significant amounts of aid to Gaza, and also they support Egypt's reconstruction plan. This was just stated yesterday by the the Russian ambassador to Cairo in a TV interview with a sister channel of yours. So of course, Russia has a lot to offer in this regard, and also Russia is one of the key mediators in the Palestinian Palestinian reconciliation efforts as well, and did host some of these conferences. But could Moscow play a larger role in this regard in coordination with Egypt? Yes, they do. And we hope that Russia will apply more pressure on Israel because it has tools that it has not utilized yet in this regard, because each and every great power at the moment needs to be on the right side of history, and standing by Israel or allowing the Palestinians to be butchered in this manner, of course, you will be on the wrong side of history.
Let me ask you about the strategic value of Russia gaining, or what could Russia be gaining from having Arab leaders, particularly as President Sisi and the Palestinian President Abbas, to participate in symbolic events such as this Victory Day?
It demonstrates that Russia is still a prominent global actor when it comes to the Middle East. Some people said, or some analysts said, since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, Russia has lost all influence and friendships in the region, which is not the case. Russia does have a strong relationship with many key regional actors, with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, with the United Arab Emirates, with Turkey, with Iran. So they have a very strong presence in the Middle East. And the presence of the president of Egypt and the president of the Palestinian Authority does demonstrate that the largest and most prominent Arab and African country is present, and also the Palestinian leader who presides over the most contentious issue or cause in the Middle East is also present. This also extends to the presence of various African leaders from Zimbabwe, from the Congo Brazzaville, from Burkina Faso to Ethiopia. It shows that Africans are present. Even Central Asian leaders were present. Of course, the Chinese president was present. The Brazilian president also was present, which means the BRICS was represented. Over 29 leaders from different parts of the world, including, for example, Robert Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, who is an EU member. So it shows that Russia is far from being isolated, that Russia is a prominent global actor, despite the incessant American and European efforts to isolate Russia and render it as a rogue state. This, of course, never materialized because Russia is a global power, and we have been saying this since the beginning of the crisis in Ukraine. And this has been demonstrated again today, as it was demonstrated in the BRICS summit in 2024 and in the Africa Russia summit in 2023, all hosted by President Putin, in which many, many leaders from all around the world have attended, including the leaders of African and Arab countries and others, and great powers as well. And my final point in this regard is it just demonstrates further that the unipolar world order is behind us. And now we are in a new world that is still materializing before our eyes. And certainly, the West is no longer the only center of this world.
If I may ask you here, you spoke about a meeting that will be taking place between President El-Sisi and the Russian president. What do you think would be the files high on the agenda of the talks?
Palestinian cause will be on the top of the agenda, as well as the overall situation in the Middle East, whether the situation in the Red Sea area, since Russia does have communication with the Houthis and with the Iranians, and also the situation in Syria, because Russia is still a prominent and effective actor over there. Also, the situation in Libya and in Sudan. Russia plays big roles in both countries. Situation in sub-Saharan Africa as well, with regards to combating terrorism. Egypt and Russia have always coordinated efforts to combat terrorism. And also, I think that the Egyptians and the Russians will discuss bilateral issues. Russia's support for Egyptian developmental projects, namely the progress of Al-Dab'a nuclear plant, the first mega nuclear plant being built on the African continent, also rising Russian investments in Egypt, and maybe even security and defense cooperation. So I think there are a multitude of areas that will be discussed, and even the Russia-Ukraine conflict can be discussed as well, because Egypt at a certain point did play some mediating roles in this conflict. Egypt mediated messages between the Biden administration and the Russian administration before in 2023 through our foreign minister. Also, Egypt is part of the African initiative, peace initiative to settle the Ukrainian war, along with South Africa and three other African countries. So Egypt does have a say and an opinion to give
Right.
on the
Right.
Ukrainian matter, acting as a neutral
Dr. Mohammed Osman, we have to go right now to a broadcast to the president in Russia. Dr. Mohammed Osman, we thank you so much for joining us here on Qnews. And now we go live to Moscow, where President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin for a high-level summit.
Регулярный и содержательный политический диалог. Наша с вами предыдущая встреча проходила в октябре 2024 года в Казани на полях саммита БРИКС, в котором ваша страна была впервые представлена в качестве полноправного участника этой организации. Египет – один из ключевых партнеров России в Африке.
For the first month in this year, you participated by 8% in the trade volume. The Intergovernmental Committee is carrying on the joint mega projects. Our two states are carrying out constant coordination, ongoing coordinated actions regarding international issues, and we are glad to discuss with you these issues as well as other fields of cooperation between Egypt and Russia. Welcome once again. Thank you so much, Mr. President. In the name of Allah, most merciful, most gracious, allow me, Mr. President, to say that I am happy to meet you once again, and I would like to express my gratitude for your warm hospitality, and I would like to extend to you and the Russian people to extend my congratulations on the Victory Day, and I was very keen on participating in these ceremonies, and I would like to appreciate our strategic partnerships signed in 2018. I would like also to praise the political consultation mechanisms, and I would like to express my hope for success for the workings of the economic and scientific cooperation in Moscow from 12 to 14 May. Your Excellency, Mr. President, I would like to thank you for the warm hospitality, and allow me once again, in the name of the Egyptian delegation and the Egyptian people, to congratulate you on the Victory Day. Thank you.
That was a briefing from the broadcast, a meeting between the President El-Sisi and the Russian Putin in Moscow, where the President thanked President Putin for his invitation to such an honorable occasion, and congratulated him on the occasion. He also spoke about the ability of boosting bilateral relations at all levels, particularly the economic and strategic ones. And I guess that brings us to the end of our news bulletin here. That is what we've been covering. The Egyptian president arrives in Moscow, a Red Square for Victory Day celebration. President Sisi reaffirmed support for the Palestinian cause during a meeting with Abbas. And Egypt joins the Moscow parade for the 80th Victory Day anniversary. That's all for now. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews for the latest developments. Many thanks for watching.